I decided to get married, and soon the wedding preparations began. I didn't want a big celebration. I envisioned a simple gathering with just our families. But my fiancée, Emma, disagreed. She insisted, "I want the wedding to be as beautiful as everyone else's. All my friends have had big weddings in fancy venues. Why should I settle for anything less?" And she wasn't wrong. So, Emma took it upon herself to organize everything, and I was left out. I must have looked silly when Emma informed me that we would have a formal wedding dance without even asking me. Just the thought of having to dance in front of everyone made my heart sink. I had no idea how to dance, and the thought of embarrassing myself terrified me. But Emma reassured me, "Don't worry, my mom will teach you." Emma's mom, Linda, had spent most of her life teaching dance. I had only seen her a few times, but soon she would be my teacher. Emma arranged for lessons, and I reluctantly agreed. When I pulled up to Linda's house, she took my hand without wasting any time and led me into the spacious living room. "Let me get a good look at you so I know what dance to teach," she said. She spun me around, pulling me closer, her hand resting firmly on my waist. Her voice was commanding, and I had no choice but to follow suit. We began to waltz, and I stepped on her foot almost immediately. Linda, however, was graceful. Her movements were effortless even at her age. I couldn't help but notice her well-groomed appearance. Her polished feet and elegant demeanor mesmerized me. For a moment I forgot about the wedding and the fact that I was to be married. My thoughts blurred and I lost myself in the moment. Suddenly, without thinking, I grabbed Linda, picked her up in my arms, and carried her into the bedroom. She looked stunned at first, but quickly reciprocated me. We ended up in the same bed, breathless and disheveled. "Well, that's something," Linda said, stretching out next to me. I lay there, panting, until she suggested we go into the kitchen and get some coffee. I agreed. After all, we were suddenly very close. "That's enough for today," Linda said, unwrapping a chocolate candy. "Come back tomorrow," she added, practically shoving me out the door. When I got home, Emma bombarded me with questions. "How did it go? What did you do?" she asked impatiently. I lazily replied that I was making progress, but I still had some work to do. She encouraged me to keep practicing so I wouldn't embarrass myself in front of the guests. I nodded, took a shower, and lay down to rest. The next day I returned for another class. Linda greeted me cheerfully and started showing me the basic steps. I wasn't very good at it, and I wasn't eager to learn. Linda seemed to catch my reluctance and asked with a smirk, "You didn't come to dance, did you?" I kissed her back, and we were lost in each other again. With each lesson, Linda and I grew closer. It was no longer just a physical proximity. There was a deeper, unspoken connection between us. Linda looked at me in a way that made me feel alive and vulnerable at the same time. Her gaze was a mixture of mischief and wisdom. She wasn't just teaching me to dance, she was teaching me to let go, to embrace something exciting and dangerous. Every time I entered her home, it felt like I was entering another world, a world where the upcoming wedding didn't matter and I could just be. The more time I spent with Linda, the more I realized how different she was from anyone I had ever known. She had an aura of confidence and mystery that drew me in, a magnetic presence that made everything else fade. I began to look forward to our lessons, not just for the dancing, but for the stolen moments we shared. Linda was unlike anyone I had ever interacted with. She was older, wiser, and yet so playful. Her laughter filled the room and her eyes spoke volumes without needing to say a word. At the wedding, I asked Linda to dance. Emma seemed a little jealous, though she tried to hide it. As Linda and I danced, her eyes sparkled and she whispered in my ear, "Come back in an hour." I nodded discreetly, already planning how to sneak out of the reception. It was intoxicating, the secrecy, the risk, Linda's laughter that sounded in my ears as we moved together. I realized I was playing with fire, but I couldn't help it. The dance lessons continued, and I was constantly looking for opportunities to be alone with Linda. She was always one step ahead, finding places where we could discreetly spend time together. I was careful no one, not even Emma, suspected a thing. It wasn't my first marriage, and I had learned from my past mistakes. Unlike my previous mother-in-law, who was strict and aloof, Linda was adventurous and captivating. The downside was that I practically missed the honeymoon, dividing my time between Emma and Linda. But the dance lessons continued. Sometimes we would actually dance for an hour, our bodies moving in sync, and sometimes the lessons would turn into something completely different. It was this unpredictability that made them so exciting. Every touch, every look, every whispered word heightened the excitement. I remember one afternoon Linda decided we should practice a more intimate dance. She turned on a slow, sultry tune and pulled me to her, our bodies almost touching. Her breath was warm on my neck, and a shiver ran down my spine. "You're getting better," she whispered, touching her lips to my ear. Unable to resist, I kissed her, and we lost ourselves in each other again. These moments felt surreal and forbidden, yet undeniably real. Emma remained oblivious, caught up in the excitement of our new life together. She trusted me completely, and I played the role of devoted husband, helping around the house, discussing our future, and making sure she was happy. But some part of me lived for those nights with Linda, for the thrill of doing something reckless and wrong. One evening after another session, Linda and I were sitting in her kitchen sipping coffee. The mood was different, more relaxed, almost contemplative. Linda looked at me, her eyes soft. "You know, this can't go on forever," she said. I nodded, realizing she was right. There was no future in what we were doing, but for now we chose to ignore that fact and enjoy every moment we had left. We spent that evening talking about our lives, dreams, and things we wanted to do. Linda shared stories from her youth, recounting her travels and adventures she had experienced before settling down. I listened, fascinated by the depth of her experience. She wasn't just the mother of my fiancé, she was a woman who had lived her life, seen the world, and never lost her sense of wonder. The more she talked, the more I was drawn to her, not just physically but emotionally. The dance lessons continued, but we both knew they were coming to an end. Emma and I were entering married life, and Linda realized it was time to let her go. Our last lesson was bittersweet. We danced, laughed, and said our goodbyes without words. I knew I would miss her, the awe, the excitement, and the way she made me feel alive. But life had to move on. The wedding dance was a success, and I impressed our guests, but more importantly, I impressed Emma. She was radiant, her eyes full of love and pride. As I hugged her that evening, I realized I was ready to move on. The time spent with Linda was a closed chapter, a secret part of my past that left me with a sense of freedom and a reminder that I was capable of more than I had ever imagined. Life went on, and so did I. Emma and I got into a routine, and dance lessons became a distant memory, a reminder of the time I danced on the edge of something dangerous and let myself fall, if only briefly. Sometimes late at night I lay awake and thought about Linda. I wondered if she thought of me too, if she missed those stolen moments as much as I did. It wasn't regret, more like longing, nostalgia for a time when everything seemed so uncertain, yet so exciting. I knew I could never go back, nor did I want to. But the memory of those days stayed with me, a secret part of my soul that I carried with me as I moved forward. Over time, Emma and I grew closer, building a life together, full of love and laughter. We had our ups and downs, like any couple, but we made it through. And through it all, I stuck to the lessons I learned with Linda, not just the dance moves, but the ability to let go, take risks, and embrace the unknown. Those lessons shaped me, made me a better husband, and ultimately brought me closer to Emma. As the years went by, I would occasionally hear from Emma about Linda, how she was doing, what she was up to. She too had moved on with her life, found new hobbies, and was enjoying life. I never saw her again, but some part of me hoped that she was happy, that she had found the same sense of peace that I had. Our time together was a beautiful, fleeting moment in both of our lives, and I knew I would always treasure it. Life keeps you moving forward, even when you think it doesn't. And when I danced with Emma at family gatherings or events, I would sometimes mentally remember Linda, her smile, her laugh, the way she made me feel. It was a reminder of a time when I stepped out of my comfort zone and embraced something wild and unpredictable. Though it's over, that time left an indelible mark on me, one that I will always carry with me.